record. There we go. Okay, so welcome everyone to the Pursuing Intentional Learning and Organizations Together project. This 4-week series is sponsored by MSU's Graduate School and the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. Today's session is titled Career Pathways, Evaluating Your Values, Skills, and Interests. Today we are excited to feature and engage in discussion with today's guest speakers. From MDARD, my name is Janetta Mulkey-Hill, and I am the Graduate Student Coordinator for this series. So just for some context, the pilot project aims to bridge the gap between graduating students and non-academic professionals and provide graduate students with valuable insights and practical strategies for transitioning from academia to non-academic careers. If you haven't registered yet, you can use the QR code displayed on the following slides to register and receive email reminders about the sessions. I will also add the link to the registration in the chat after the introduction. So the pilot project includes a series of virtual meetings held on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4 p.m. from July 9th to August 1st via Zoom. Tuesdays will feature guest speakers from MDARD on a specific topic for the week, and Thursdays will be dedicated to interactive workshops to help us apply what we've learned, develop practical skills, and support each other with our career transitions. Thank you everyone for your participation last week. We had a very insightful and generative discussions, and we are looking forward to this week's session. As a reminder, please remember to use the Zoom link from today's session for Thursday's workshop. So for the next 3 weeks, we will delve into the following topics. This week, we will reflect on our values, skills, and interests and motivators to create a personalized framework for evaluating career opportunities. Next week, we will focus on conducting job searches and crafting resumes and cover letters tailored to non-academic roles. In our final week, we will focus on strategies for job interviews and optimizing networking for career growth. And then just one last thing before we get into the guest speakers, if you would like to receive a certificate acknowledging your participation in this series and workshops, please let me know. You can email me. My email is on the slide. If to qualify for the certificate, you must attend at least 75% of the guest speaker sessions and workshops. If you let me know, I will add your name to the list and we'll send a certificate after the completion of the series on August 1st. So now I'd like to introduce today's speakers. First, we have Carly Clarity, who is the Plant Health Inspector for the Bureau of Environment and Sustainability. Then we have Jennifer Calagero, who is the Animal Industry Division Director for the Bureau of Food Safety and Animal Health. Then we have Amber Niles, who is the Quarantine Compliance and Export Specialist for the Bureau of Environment and Sustainability. We are excited to have them with us today to share their insights and experiences. Each presentation will last about 15 minutes and allow us to have a 10-minute session at the end for questions. Feel free to add your questions to the chat as they come to mind during the presentations, but we'll address them once all the presentations are complete. You are also welcome to unmute at the end to ask your questions directly. Again, just another reminder that today's session will be recorded and posted on our website for those who are unable to attend. So just to ensure that we can all see and hear the speakers clearly during the presentations, just please turn off your mics and videos for now. Thank you for being here, and let's get started. Carly, do you mind going first?
Sure. Let me share my screen. Does that look okay?
It looks great.
Okay, perfect. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for having me join you. My name is Carly Clarity, and today I'm going to share a little bit about my career path with you all. So just as a little introduction, this is who I am. So currently I'm a plant health inspector with MDARD, and I've been here for about a year. In this role, I do inspections of nurseries and greenhouses to regulate plant pests and diseases. And I cover Livingston and Washtenaw counties currently. So my education background, I am a 2-time Spartan myself, so go green. Most recently, I graduated with my master's in crop and soil science in 2022. So I'm the early career perspective today. And I put on here that my hometown is Springport, Michigan, which is a very small rural farming community just south of Lansing. And that kind of got me started on this career path of being in agriculture. And so I kind of outlined the brief path there for you from everything. So I originally started working on agricultural research, like field trials. That it was a company that was really close to my high school, and that's how I got started. But then in going to MSU, I worked at the potato breeding lab. It kind of lined up with my class interests. I was like taking plant breeding classes, and so I thought that I would want to pursue that as a career path. So ended up doing internships focused on that. And then from there, a lot of these positions were stemmed from just connections that I had made through different meetings, classes. I ended up staying at grad school to study weed science. And during that time, I was a student assistant at MDARD. And so that's really how I got connected with MDARD in the first place. But I took a brief role in Germany where I did an exchange program for 3 months and came back, worked in ag retail, and here I am at MDARD. So that's a little brief synopsis of everything, and I have some visuals for you all to see what exactly that looked like. So really like boots on the ground, hand harvesting a lot of different field crops for research trials. These photos are, the first two are of different host families that I stayed with in Germany. So one was a wine lab, one was a dairy farm, and I just threw these in here to show, again, like how your non-academic experiences can contribute to like what you learn and skills you gained that can benefit you in the future. So yeah, and then that's presenting on plant genomics for my graduate research. Let's see. And finally, I just wanted to add in there, like, don't be afraid to wear many hats. The pictures on the left and right are during my current role at MDARD. So sometimes I have to wear a bee suit. Sometimes it's like a hard hat and safety gear. So yeah. With all that, I just wanted to start off with like 4 tips and tricks that I've learned and have kind of guided me through my career path thus far. The first is just to go where your curiosity leads. What are your natural talents and interests? And for me, that has been agriculture right along. But like I mentioned earlier, some of my classes influenced like some the topics that I wanted to learn more about, and I kind of followed those through. The second would be to say yes to opportunity. And this also means like even if you change your mind down the road, if you're like 6 months into a new position and you decide it's not for you, like that's totally okay. It doesn't mean you failed at anything. It means you gained a new experience. And also rejection is redirection. Like I probably applied to, I don't know, maybe 50 positions post-graduation, interviewed some, but ultimately like got 2 offers that I decided between. And it's led me to where I am today. So, and then the third one would be the people you surround yourself with matter. And this is kind of a buzz term, like tap into your network. But again, just making connections with people. You never know who you're going to talk to. And also having mentors that are willing to invest in you and help you grow, even if it's not staying with that company or organization, that they help you achieve like what your goals are. And finally, this is one that a high school teacher has always told, like, or had said to me, and it's always stayed in my mind. that the world is run by those who show up. And so just basically means being driven, hardworking, on time, really brings you halfway there. And I've also heard it said, like, folks hire the smile and teach the skill. So if you're already like personable, willing to learn, and driven, like, that already puts you above a lot of people. So, and then this visual, I think, is a really good example of like where you are today. You're in this transitionary period between the past. So, like, here, you're born, this is the life path you've taken due to choices, circumstances outside of your control, to bring you here to where you are today with all of your skills, values, everything that you have. And all these other life paths are closed to you. And looking towards the future, there's a lot of opportunity and different paths that you can take. And I remember that feeling very daunting, but it can also be a really positive thing, because all of those opportunities are open to you. And your only job is to take the next best like step for you. It doesn't have to be like, this doesn't have to be your final career where you're going to retire from, or yeah, you just have to take the next right step. So I think it's really important to reflect on all of those past experiences to get an idea of what you want for the future. And so my suggestion would be to write down all of those academic and non-academic experiences that you've had and come up with a few skills or lessons learned from each of those. And hopefully you're doing this already to prepare for interviews. So you have something ready for when somebody asks you, give me a time when you had to lead a team or something like that, you have those examples ready. And just remember, there's a difference between like what you did and what you learned from that experience. So what you did, in my example, like, there was a lot of summers I would count the number of soybeans in a field. That's what I did. But what I learned was like record keeping, managing my time to accomplish a certain number of fields by a deadline. And those are all of the transferable skills that employers are really going to look for. So in evaluating that skill set, you also want to consider your interests, and think about what aspects of each of those past positions that you've had you liked or disliked, because it's just as important to learn about both. And what you want to do is like gather those likes and figure out like, what do you want more of? And this requires you to ask questions of yourself, like, what did you like about the environment? Was it the people that you were working with? Was it the actual job that you were doing? And to help with this, I put together a little this or that sheet. So many of you have probably seen these on social media, but I made the job search edition. So this is a simple way for you to go back and forth and decide, like, do you want a job that's you're working from home, or do you want to work in a lab? Do you want to stay close to family or move somewhere new? All of these things, you can, create a list of what options are the best for you. So we've kind of talked about the skills first, and then your interests, what you're interested in. And this is an exercise that can help you determine your values. So I think we'll just save this to do on your own time. But my suggestion would be to take a few minutes to write about your perfect morning. And you want to be as descriptive as possible. Who is there with you? What are you doing? Where are you? So if you look up out your window, like, do you want to see mountains? Do you want to see palm trees? Like, what's outside your window? When is it? Why are you doing what you're doing? And this is going to help you decide like what you really want to value in your life. For example, like for the who question, is it important to you that you are able to have breakfast with family that lives close by some days of the week or something like that? So um, yeah, this is just a good like journal exercise for you to do. So in combining all three of these things, the first thing I wanted to say was like, you can dream it up. Like, what does your ideal life look like? And then you can start to prioritize, okay, what are the three things that you want out of a job or career that you want to focus on? And maybe it is location. You want to live close to family or move somewhere new. Maybe it's the nature of the job that you're doing, and maybe it's the finances. And you can create those top three priorities that maybe you don't want to flex on, but then determine what you are willing to be flexible on, and make sacrifices for. So while you might not be able to attain your dream job right away, what you want to do is have most of these things align closer to your values, and through more experiences, gather more of those likes, like I was saying earlier, and just continue on that path of like, more of this, please, that aligns with what you want. So a few other suggestions of things that I did to help me in this process. You can find opportunities to job shadow, or even just reach out to people who are in a position that you think you might want in the future. And what I did for this was I contacted people on LinkedIn who had positions that I would have qualified for when I graduated. And some of them, I had a couple people let me schedule a Teams meeting with them to just discuss their position, what they did, like what did they like, not like about it, and be really honest, which was super helpful in deciding, like, should I even pursue trying to apply for a job like this ahead of time. So that's one way that it was super helpful for me. And again, that requires like tapping into your network. Your advisor and like previous supervisors are a great resource for this, because they can get you connected with people that you might be interested in doing this with, job shadowing or something like that. And then, let's see. Another option would be to just continue going to like networking events and meetings and being open to any sort of connection. Make sure you are passing out business cards and being open and willing to make conversation with people while you're there. So you never know who you will meet. And like I said, that is kind of how I made it through different internships and things, especially at MSU, and after, was just talking to lots of different people. So finally, I just wanted to say, like, make sure you do take time to rest and enjoy where you are. Like, this is an exciting transitionary time, while you are get to where you want to be. So with that, in summary, again, these are my 4 tips. So go where your curiosity leads, say yes to opportunity. The people you surround yourself with matter, and the world is run by those who show up. So I hope when you see this graphic again, that you're really excited for all the opportunities that the future may hold. With that, here's my email if anybody wants to contact me about anything. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Carly. First, I really love how you illustrated your academic and professional journey with images and photos. I love that. But also thank you for your very tangible advice and reflective prompts. It's very useful for us as we think about these things over the next few weeks. And I also appreciate your emphasis on resilience and putting yourself out there. That was something that was emphasized a lot in last week's sessions. So Jennifer, do you mind going next?
Nope, not a problem. Let me go ahead and share screen. We're used to working in teams, so bear with me. Oops, hang on. Can you see, is it in the presentation mode? Are we
Yep,
good to go?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Jen Calogero. I am the Animal Industry Division Director within the Bureau of Food Safety and Animal Health, and I'm really excited to be joining you today. And I'd like to just start off by saying everyone has a unique story and pathway, and I'm really looking forward to sharing my story and a few highlights and recommendations for you to consider as you're looking into your future. So I'm a Michigander. I was born and raised in Michigan. I was one of those children who always wanted to be a veterinarian when I grew up. I had dogs, frogs, fish, guinea pigs. Growing up, I also lived in a subdivision. So in my mind, I always wanted to be a small animal practicing veterinarian. And again, I was one of those kids that I continued to have that goal all through elementary, middle school, high school, and then also through my college education. So I also bleed green, so go green. I attended Michigan State for my undergraduate, majoring in animal science with the goal of going to veterinary school. And it was during this time at Michigan State during my undergrad that I started being introduced to large animals or production medicine. I started working on MSU's farms, so the swine farm, dairy farm, et cetera. And I learned that I really enjoyed working and looking at the big picture as opposed to the individual animal level. It was also during my undergrad that I started volunteering in a research lab, working on ticks and mosquitoes, so looking at Lyme disease and West Nile virus. And it was this experience that really introduced me to the One Health concept of medicine, which is a concept that incorporates three different pillars, so humans, animals, and the environment, and the interaction or overlap between these areas. And I learned that I truly enjoyed working on this One Health concept. Again, it was that big picture that I really enjoyed as opposed to the individual level. So it was that volunteer experience that led to a student job, again, when I was an undergrad at the lab, but then that also led to a graduate degree. So after my undergrad, I was accepted to Michigan State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. So I started veterinary school, but at the same time, I decided to pursue a PhD. So I did a dual DVM PhD program, and my PhD was within the College of Veterinary Medicine, but within the Comparative Medicine and Integrative Biology program. And my PhD focused on Lyme disease ecology within Michigan. So as I mentioned, so I did both my DVM and my PhD at the same time. So I did this for about the first 2.5 years of veterinary school. I did both programs simultaneously. And then I took a year off from veterinary school and really had a year dedicated to field work for my PhD. And a lot of this work was doing field work, looking for the spread of the Lyme disease tick and bacterium across the state of Michigan. When so I took that year off of veterinary school, and then I went, and so when I came back after that, I went with the veterinary school class that was initially right under me. And so I ended up graduating from veterinary school a year after than I initially had planned, but it was worth it in order for me to work for that year on my PhD for the field work aspect. But at this point, as you can see with one of the pictures, wrong way, do not enter. I'd like to pause and mention, don't be afraid to take non-traditional paths or explore the quote unquote wrong way. Most individuals do not don't pursue dual doctorate programs, but it is possible and it is an option. And it may not be the option you're necessarily pursuing, and that's okay. But I think the take home here is don't be afraid to try something new or non-traditional. And this goes within the academia setting, but also as you're looking for new jobs. So don't be afraid, don't limit yourself. Really try to explore the non-traditional paths. And if you have a goal in mind, try it, see if it's possible. Again, it's not, if you would like to try it, see if it's available. When I was finishing up my field work for my PhD, so I graduated from veterinary school and then I was finishing up my field work for my PhD, I first did a year-long internship with the National Park Service Wildlife Health Branch in Fort Collins, Colorado. So I started working, as you've noticed a common thread here, I'm usually doing at least a couple of things simultaneously. So graduated from veterinary school, and then I started working in an internship in addition to working on finishing up my PhD. After this internship, I worked as a wildlife biologist for the National Park Service for a couple of years, using my veterinary degree in a non-traditional pathway. And I was stationed up at Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore, so in northern Michigan. Then an opportunity presented itself to work for the state of Michigan and down here in Lansing area. And this was with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services within the emerging and zoonotic infectious disease section. So I jumped on this opportunity because it allowed me to move closer to home and closer to family. But it also really incorporated that One Health concept of medicine, which again was something I've been really truly interested in. At the time I took this position, I was able to defend and graduate with my PhD. And then after working for Michigan Department of Health and Human Services for a few years, a position opened up with Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. And so I ended up, I was interested in that, and I ended up applying, and I was given the opportunity to be a program manager within the animal industry division. And so that program manager, I oversaw cervids, so deer, elk, reindeer, et cetera, and small ruminants, so sheep, goats. And so this is really incorporating the animal aspect of the One Health concept of medicine. So I got a little bit of the wildlife, I got the human, and now I'm in like the actual domestic animal aspect of the One Health concept. I ended up serving as a program manager for a couple of years until I was promoted to the assistant state veterinarian. And I really enjoyed being the assistant state veterinarian because it allowed me to work in multiple different program areas, and it really allowed my leadership experience to grow. And then after being the assistant state veterinarian for a few years, this past January, I was promoted to the animal industry division director, which is where I am now. So that's a long way of telling you my story, but I think I'm going to highlight a few points that I'd like to mention that have already been mentioned in a certain way, but I'm going to highlight a couple others. The first one, keep an open mind. Again, look for those unique opportunities, and you won't know until you try it. And as illustrated by my like the dual DVM and PhD, you can have the best of two worlds. So don't limit yourself. Just because most people don't do it doesn't mean it's the quote unquote wrong way. Mentorship is key. So whether or not this refers to applying to jobs or while on the job, it's important to have guidance from others. So seek out those opportunities when you're able to. As already mentioned, I do recommend shadowing or talking to current employees before applying to a job if possible. So for example, I spoke with a couple of veterinarians that worked at Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development before I even applied to get a better idea of the work environment, priorities, et cetera. And as mentioned earlier, they can really be honest with you, and then that can help you determine if it'll be a good fit or not. Network whenever possible. I have done this throughout my entire academic career and even after leaving Michigan State University, and this leads to opportunities. So build those relationships, get to know folks, and reach out whenever you have the opportunity. I do recommend practicing interviews. Whenever you have the opportunity to interview, I do recommend taking it. Interviewing takes practice. So the more opportunities you have, I think that really will help set you up for success. And if you see a job out there and it sparks your interest, apply. If nothing else, maybe you'll get an interview and you can get that practice. And then I'm going to take it one step further before I wrap it up, and just mention a few. I know we're talking about like the criteria for evaluating jobs and opportunities. I do recommend reading the job description if they provide you one. Also the position description if provided, and ensure it aligns with your interests and personal goals. So as mentioned, I love the this or that mentioned in the previous presentation. So see if it matches the location that you're looking for. See if it matches if you're like in person or remote. See if it is field oriented, lab oriented, office oriented. See if it matches with what you're looking for and those priorities that you're hoping to accomplish with the job you're looking at. I think it's important to make sure you meet the job requirements and then talk with current or past employees if at all possible. See LinkedIn as mentioned. Also, if you have any kind of connections, again, that networking opportunity, reaching out to at least one person and then they may point you into a different direction for someone you may be able to talk to for a position you're interested in. And then apply. It doesn't hurt to apply. I applied to multiple positions and it doesn't hurt. And if nothing else, hopefully you can interview with them and get that practice. But I do recommend when you are interviewing, if you are given the opportunity to interview, I think it's important that to keep in the back of your mind, they're not only interviewing you, but you should be interviewing them at the same time. And this will give you the opportunity to see if it's going to be a good fit. Because again, you need to be happy and enjoying the position you are going to be embarking in. And so making sure that it's the right fit with the right people, I think is really important during that interview process. And so with that, I was really quick, but I'm hoping for some good questions and I'd be happy to entertain any now if you have any, or we can wait until the end.
Yeah, let's just wait until after Amber's presentation and then we can
Sounds great.
For questions. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jen. It's really nice to see another perspective of someone who's had a lot of school, who's done a lot of school. I'm a PhD student and the idea of getting like a degree in veterinary medicine at the same time is just super impressive. So thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for sharing about just being open to opportunities and taking the unconventional path. That's kind of sometimes hard to accept, but I appreciate it. And I'm sure we all do. And with that, let's go over to Amber.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. And I will get my screen shared here. Does that look good?
Yes, it does.
All right. Thank you again for having me. I did this a couple years ago and it was a lot of fun to hear how helpful I can be to other people to hear similar scenarios. This is always a unique experience for everyone, but also we all experience the same thing. So sometimes it's good to hear that. So my name is Amber Niles. Also, I have a PhD from Michigan State, so go green, and I am now the Quarantine Compliance and Export Specialist for the Michigan Department of Agriculture in the Bureau of Environmental Sustainability. So a little background about me. I was born and raised in Perry, New York, which is a tiny little farming community in Western New York, about an hour outside of Buffalo. Again, inspired to kind of stick around agriculture because of that. For my undergrad, I went to State University of New York at Geneseo for a bachelor's in biology, and then I went on to MSU for a PhD in plant pathology. That sounds so tidy, but it was not that tidy at all, and I will get into more later. Right now, we're living in Petoskey with my husband and 8-year-old son, and I work remotely for MDARD as the Quarantine Compliance and Export Specialist. So about my MDARD career, I started while I was finishing writing my dissertation and my son was less than 1 year old. Um, I was working in the Mary Hosbeck lab, for those of you who might be familiar. And that was a lot to start a brand new job, move up north from Lansing and try to write and have a little baby. And so I was an inspector like Carly when I first started, and I was an inspector for 5.5 years, and I covered the 14 counties in northern Michigan, and I was based in Petoskey, and I still am. So MDARD is amazing for having tons of opportunities for career and personal development. That was one of my favorite things about this job, is that there's a lot of opportunities to pursue whatever you're interested in. And we love to see that when someone is enthusiastic and wants to go above beyond the normal duties of your job. I applied for 4 different promotions before I was finally got the offer for my specialist role that I'm in now in April of 2022. So my early education and career path, I was a first generation college student. Navigating that as the first time in my family was an interesting thing to go through. And I had a really hard time focusing on what I wanted to do because I was interested in everything, especially being outside. So that led to this very winding path that I hinted towards. I thought I wanted to be a mason. I could be outside and play them in cement. I loved math, so maybe accounting. I don't know. I like forestry because I love the forest, and how can we make that, sustainable? And so I worked in jobs that were business related. I worked for the USDA Plant Protection Quarantine division, and I did some farming. I even dabbled in activism before I realized that's more for the extroverted type of person, in my opinion. I was a researcher when I was at MSU, a grad student, and I've even worked for a few nonprofits. And even though all these experiences were all over the board, they always brought me some kind of clarity about what I wanted in the next step or the path forward. So sometimes those winding paths will be beneficial, and you'll be able to identify more in this or that exercise. Like, I tried that and I thought I was going to like it and I didn't. And so that helps you move forward in the right direction. And so I am an introverted person. So I always like to kind of do this shout out thing because I struggled so much being an introverted person in the beginning of my life. And it took me a long time to realize that there's values, and every kind of person, even if it's not being introverted, you bring something unique. And sometimes that uniqueness can make you feel like you're different. And that's something to be like understated, but I think it takes all kinds. And so find those unique things about you and find out what's valuable about that, and then, own that. And so it can be hard to network and stand out when you're an introverted, and you're often overshadowed by someone who's louder and can make more noise about their ideas. It takes this energy to speak up, and you can sometimes be labeled as weird, or they think you're snobbish because you're not the one who just come up and talk. But a wise employer sees that an introverted person can be reflective, and they're able to listen and focus, and they're calm. They can be great writers and creative and sensitive people. So not only, it's a two-edged sword, I guess. So when you're interviewing, you can highlight those features of an introverted person, or whatever characteristic it has that you have that's unique. So something that really changed my life was a book called Quiet: The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And some quotes from that book that I like. There's zero correlation between being the best talker and having the best ideas. So I loved that. So it kind of opened my eyes that I don't love talking, but I have these great ideas, and when I finally do get them out, they're more powerful in a way. The secret to life is to put yourself in the right lighting. For some, it's a Broadway spotlight. For others, it's a lamplit desk. Use your natural powers of persistence, concentration, and insight to do work you love and work that matters. So I recommend that to anyone who might be interested. It's a really great book. So my time in school, like I said, I went to SUNY Geneseo, and I took every opportunity there to build connections, and I sought out as many different experiences to build knowledge in the areas of my studies, which helped me understand where I really wanted to go for my next steps. And that led me to MSU for graduate school in plant pathology, because that was interesting to me for various reasons. I liked plants, I liked fungus, and I liked the ability to do applied research that was going to directly affect the, food crops and fiber crops, and feel like a place where I could make a change in the world. So while I was there, I made a lot of connections. Everyone does, I think, with fellow graduate students, especially the postdocs, professors, and staffs, and always ask questions and don't be afraid, because I think, especially in academia, people like to answer questions that about their work, because they're so focused on that it's like, don't be afraid to ask questions. They love it. I joined or led clubs, attended conferences, and networked at events the best that I could. And of course, read books, I explored hobbies, and found classes on identifying and strengthening skills and values. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Lisa Loftman at MSU, but she teaches a couple of courses there. During my time at MSU, there was a workshop on trying to think of the name of the course. It was some kind of emotional resilience. And it was a lot about identifying your values and skills and then living by them. And there's all kinds of things that she does now online or in person that you can take advantage of while you're a student, because they're really valuable. And then I also did the MSU Master Naturalist program, because as I was narrowly focused on my disease organism, I really wanted to explore other things that were more in the natural world. So MSU did this Master Naturalist thing, and that helped me do more with invasive species, which applies well to the job that I have now. So once I was ready to settle in for a long-term job search, I, again, like everyone else is saying, the criteria, the location I want to live in, what's my desired lifestyle, what is the quality of life that I want to have? Is there a field aspect if you want to be outdoor, if you want to work remotely? Are the subjects stimulating? And what's the training atmosphere? One of the things I really like about MDART compared to my time in academia is that training is really prioritized, and I like knowing what I'm doing. And so there's a lot more available in this role than I had when it was kind of like, you need to find out what you can research and figure that out, which some people love, and maybe you do. A supportive and inclusive culture, what impact can I have, and is there space for growth? So again, preparing for your job search, do that self-assessment. What are my skills? What are my interests? What are my strengths and goals and values? What do you love doing every day? What inspires you? And then translate these into skills. So for example, I like finding ways to explain concepts to students that make sense to them. So I liked teaching. That always felt good to me. So to translate into a skill that you can talk about in a job interview or a resume, you can say, I can break down complex ideas into parts and come up with creative ways to explain information. So just spin those things that you like doing into a valuable skill. So when I was identifying my skills, it was about 40% feedback from my mentors and peers to help me to know oh, you're good at that. But it was 60% listening to my own feelings and the confidence that I had in particular skill sets. Because somebody might say to you, hey, you're really good at this, but you I don't feel very confident in there. And sometimes that lack of confidence can make you you're not going to be happy if you follow that skill set down a career path. You want to have confidence and interest in those skill sets that you want to follow. Assessment tools can help. There's some available online, quizzes, and there's programs on campus. Like I said, Lisa Loftman has some good ones. And there's clubs like Toastmasters, which help you be a better public speaker, and in a lot of other ways give you support and feedback. I did join Toastmasters for a short time. And then help somebody else, because that's always been really helpful to me in all aspects. From high school, when I didn't understand a math problem, talking to someone else about it, I would suddenly understand it. Or job interviewing. When I was interviewing for those specialist roles, I thought I was doing a great job, and I had done mock interviews, but until I served on an interview panel, I really didn't, it helped me really understand what it was like to listen to somebody talking about themselves, and finally clicked. I was like, I see how I should be presenting myself and really fleshing out these stories about the skills that I have and what I bring to the table, instead of this, I'm very efficient and I can answer this question very well. and fast. So try to find those opportunities to help others. Knowing your, I can't read my title on my slide because my little share things in the top, but marketing yourself. So search for a job that matches your skill set. Happiness is in job because you excel at the skills required, and then recognize the skills that you want to build, and then seek a job that will allow for it. And so maybe there's a skill that you're confident in, but you know you could be better at, and so you want a job that will allow you to continue growing in that skill. Like Carly said, a lot of jobs will hire you and then train in that skill if you're the right fit for the job. And then make sure you're highlighting the right skill set for the job you're applying to. Like Jen said, you want to read those job position descriptions and make sure you know what they're looking for so that you can make sure you're presenting yourself in the appropriate way. So there, again, read the position descriptions again carefully. Try to talk to someone who's in that role or in a similar role. Don't be afraid to reach out and say, is there somebody that I can talk to? People will often be very generous and explain their positions and what their experience has been like. And then make sure you're researching the company or the department the best you can online. We have a lot of job aids within MDARD, advice for interviewing. And then on our website, it says the particular type of interview that we do. Carly gave a great example of like, explain a time when you had to lead a group and that was successful. That's the kind of questions we're looking for, which was a little bit of a surprise to me as I applied for this role. I was expecting more like, tell us about plant pathology and all you know, and it was more about how do you work, in general. So I want to leave plenty of time for questions. And so I just want to say good luck and keep an open mind, because the job that I applied for, the inspector job, I didn't even know that existed until I was on the job hunt and I found it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love plant pathology and I like plant diseases and plants, but here's a job that doesn't make me go so narrowly focused into just that, but I can work with invasive species. At the time I was working with animal feed, pesticides, fertilizer. So it helped me feel like I wouldn't be boring at a dinner party where I just wanted to talk about my one disease on my one crop that I was working on, but I would have all kinds of things to kind of be jack of all trades sort of thing, and always keep it interesting. So keep your own goals in top of mind and don't worry about what the people around you are expecting, because you're the one that's going to have to live with that choice that you make. And there's my email I put on that last slide. You can always reach out to me with questions. I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Amber. That was lovely. I love your advice about being an introvert and like networking and how that works. And how being an introvert is both like a strength and an asset, and it takes a wise employer to recognize that and like play to those strengths. I also love your 40-60 rule. Like 40% is listening to others and 60% is like listening to your gut and like trusting that your feelings are going to lead you in the right direction. That's really excellent advice, and some of the hardest to like feel confident to follow. So thank you so much. I'd like to open it up to questions. You can unmute if you have a question, or you can put it in the chat and I will respond, or I will read it aloud for our speakers. Either works. I could also get the ball rolling while people are typing in the chat. But one thing I was thinking a lot about while all three of you were talking is this idea of, I know Jen explicitly mentioned this idea of like, you're also interviewing that company, and like Amber mentioned, kind of trying to get insights into the culture to see if it aligns with your values and interests. So can you speak more to that, like how you actually do that?
I can go ahead and start, and then Amber and Carly can add on their experiences as well. I think in my experience, oftentimes interviews are a panel of people. And so you they'll introduce themselves. You'll also get the opportunity, just based on their interaction with you during the interview process. I think you can shed a little bit of light as well. If it'll depend, nowadays a lot of interviews are virtual, so that does potentially limit to a certain extent. But if you do have the in-person, then you do get an opportunity to get a feel of the office setting, or the lab setting, the field setting, et cetera, depending on where that interview is held. I also would recommend and highly encourage most interviews, if not all interviews from my experience. I do have an exception, but most of the time they'll ask at the end for if you have questions for the panel. I do recommend coming prepared for those questions, and that'll really shed a little bit of light based on their responses, because they won't know the questions you're going to be asking, similar to you don't know the questions that they're going to be asking you. And so that'll really get them talking, and probably be a little less formal, because the questions are often formal when you're interviewing. And so that'll really allow the panel to open up, and you can shed some light as to what it would be like working there, or based on the questions, if you feel like it would be a good fit or not. So that's really, I think, a great opportunity as well that I'd recommend.
Yep, I was going to say similar, but also when you're coming up with your skill set, that can kind of help you guide what those questions could be. So like I was saying, I like to teach, and that is the skill. So if you wanted to word a question at the end, like you're prepared, and maybe you cover it in your question, so have a few in your back pocket, but you say like, I really like the opportunity to train others. Will I have that opportunity in this job? Or something along those lines. So that's how you could develop those questions and slip them in at the end. And then I also think that just being in the mindset when you go into an interview, that this isn't just about them deciding if they want me. It's me about deciding if I want them. Just gives you that feeling of power, and it helps you feel confident and portray confidence during the interview.
I guess the only other thing I would add is maybe you could ask about like if employees like meet up outside of work, or if they have if that's something that's important to you. So I'm thinking of like my lab at MSU. Like a few of the lab mates, we started doing trivia. Some people like joined a soccer team and stuff. So that's something like that was a key topic like in the lab that everybody knew and like talked about, that we would like connect up with outside of working there too. So you could ask about something like that, like how often you have meetings like that aren't strictly work related, or something like that, if that's something that interests you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else would like to unmute or put a question in the chat? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the workshops. And my question is, so during this job searching process, like we've gone through grad school, we have these like hard skills like programming or others, and which are sort of written on paper in our resumes and CVs. But like, how do we even work like our like soft skills into that? Like, say I'm an extroverted person, I like people, I chat with people easy, I've been teaching a lot. So a lot of these are, I'm like, this is somewhere I enjoy, but it's sort of not in the, it's not like a box you can check, say great communicator or something. How do you work that in? Does it even make sense? Yeah. How do you present yourself?
Yeah, I can start. Just the first thing that comes to my mind is when you're in that interview, we'll have the opportunity to say those things and work those into an example. So I like to keep a running list of examples that I've had. So say you worked on a programming project that you had to share with outside people, and you succeeded in that because you're an extroverted person and people are likable, and you kind of slip that into the story. You say, I worked on this project, I kicked butt at it because I am this way. And then they get that feel.
Amber, you read my mind. That's exactly where I was going to go as well. And I think I would recommend for prepping for interviews, I usually have a few, and I think that's what Amber was getting at as well, a few things that I specifically want to highlight. So these are big accomplishments that you accomplished within your master's, and you really want to talk about these three things. And so you find different opportunities based on the questions to make sure that those are incorporated. And then going along those highlights, you can have those softer skills in the background, like associated with this this accomplishment. I really had, my leader, my leadership, my extrovert, working with others, all those soft skills highlighted as well, like the three things that go with this thing or this accomplishment. I think just making those prep, then you can find ways, it's sort of like your talking points, you can find ways to incorporate those within your questions, just like Amber said.
I don't think I have anything to add to that one. So.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you so much. Anyone else have a question? Okay, I'll ask one last question with the few minutes we have left. So there's this like idea of identifying like your values, your interests, your skill sets. But how do you prioritize them, I guess? And how do you determine like, or your personal needs, like if location is more important than this other aspect of a job? Like how do you prioritize that when you are making your career decisions?
I can start. Sorry. I feel like in that case, if like location is a big one, because if you're limiting yourself to like the Lansing area or even Michigan, like there's only probably so many jobs that fit your skill set that are open at the time that you're trying to apply, and that you're qualified for. And so if you are limiting yourself to just that, I feel like you have to be able to make or willing to make some sacrifices on maybe the other things. Finances might be one of them. Like the job that I took after graduating was not like the highest paying job that I thought I would get after finishing with my master's, but I wanted to stay in this area. It was what was available. Like I did make some sacrifices with that. And I feel like that's what you had to do. If I wanted to move out of state, there were a lot more opportunities for the positions that I was looking for, but I just chose not to prioritize that over like staying close to home. So yeah, you kind of have to be willing to flex on some of those things and decide like what you are willing to sacrifice for. So maybe you choose to move away because it's better for financial reasons, hoping that you can come back at some point. So yeah, that's why I did mention in my job, and like we mentioned this to undergrads too when I was TAing for a class, like you might not get your dream job, but it's like the closer you can get. So if you move away, maybe it's only a couple years and a position opens up where you want to be later on. So
I think that's excellent advice, Carly. I also will add, I think it's okay and keep an open mind that your priorities may change. And when you apply for a job, it may not be your forever job. You can hold a job for a couple of years, and maybe it's not a good fit and your priorities change. Where you are in life could change, and therefore your priorities may change as a result. And I also think giving it a try, because you may think that, okay, it's really important for me to make a lot of money, so I will move away from home. And then you realize a year into this, oh my gosh, I can't do this without the support system. Or maybe you're starting a family and it's really important for you to be moving back closer to your family. It's a different stage of your life. So it's okay for your priorities to change, and it's okay to try something and realize that I thought that was my priority, but it really, really wasn't a good fit. And there's nothing wrong with that as well. So I think keeping that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I think that's great as well. And I would just add, from my own experience, like you think you know your values and your skills and you have them on a nice little list and you're like, these are all the things that I want. And then you're looking at job postings and you're like, yeah, that hits a lot of the points. And oh, this looks great to me. But take the time to visualize yourself actually doing that work. And sometimes that is like, ugh, like, and then you suddenly realize like something about this, it really does not feel good anymore. And I liken it to the idea, there's this quote that I've always liked, and I'm not gonna be able to say it word for word, but it's like, if you're trying to decide between two things, flip a coin and let fate decide. And then you're like, while that coin is in the air, you're like, oh God, please don't land on tails. And suddenly you know what you actually want. You think you don't care, but when you actually think about it, you're like, suddenly it floats to the top what you really want. So that's the way you can kind of get ahead of it without jumping in.
Right. Well, we are at 5. So thank you all so much. Thank you to everyone who participated, and thank you to our guest speakers. We really, really appreciate it. And yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All. Good luck.
Thank you. Good luck. Bye.
Bye.